Well, hello again. Politically incorrect old white guy here. And we're back on the in the political arena. Today's topic is the F word. And no, that's not what you thought it was. The F word in this context is freedom. And it's probably the most abused and misused word in political discourse. Both sides like to throw that word around. And when they are, watch out, because they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes in some cases. So let's start by looking at the dictionary definition of freedom. So here you see freedom defined as the state of being free, unrestricted, or empowered to act, speak, or think without coercion, often defined as liberty, independence, or autonomy. It signifies liberation from confinement, as in slavery or incarceration, control, or oppression. Now you can see why the Democrats like to use this word, because they love using the oppression word. The Republicans like the control aspect. They don't think you should have that every life aspect of your life should be controlled by the government, including the right to make choices such as free will. And there again, the Democrats like that in the context of abortion, or political self-government, which was the issue back in the day when the Declaration of Independence was drafted. And there you see that independence is a synonym for freedom. So the colony at that time wanted to be self-governing and free or independent of Britain. You see another word there as a synonym for freedom, and that is liberty, and that's written into our Constitution. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which originally apparently was drafted as the pursuit of property, but that was controversial because property at that time was the word property was used in the context of slave ownership. Slaves were property. So they scotched property and they put in happiness. But basically the gist of it is you should be free to do what you want without anyone threatening your life, taking your life away from you, or without anyone limiting what you can and cannot do. So here you see some other synonyms for the word. Sovereignty, obviously, privilege, right, free will, and what have you. So let's now talk about another very historically significant use of the word liberty, and that was in the French Revolution. So in the French Revolution, the slogan that developed was liberté, égalité, and fraternité. Liberté meaning liberty, obviously, was a fundamental ideal of the French Revolution in 1789. It went on for 10 years, believe it or not. This represented the fight against the monarchy. So at that time, they had a king. I think it was Louis the 14th or something. And then there was a whole system of aristocracy, feudal privilege, and the rest of us were left to our own devices and were restricted, and the rest of the French citizenry at that stage was very restricted or felt oppressed by the system of aristocracy. So that was the fundamental gist of their revolution, was to achieve liberty from this oppressive system. They had other, they further defined liberty, however, more broadly. They defined it as the ability to do anything that does not harm others. And that's the important qualification there. That does not harm others. And that's true of the United States use of the word pursuit of happiness. You can pursue happiness as long as you don't damage other people in the process. So, for example, they say the famous example, or the one that's always used, I'm trying to think of the word, but the hackneyed phrase is, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater. That's because, you can say whatever the hell you want, except when it comes to causing harm to other people, which would probably ensue if you shouted fire in a crowded theater, because people would rush for the exits and there would be people trampled and possibly even killed. That can happen in a panic crowd situation like that. So again, liberty does not mean you can do whatever the hell you want. It means you can do anything that does not harm others. And this we'll come back to in the context of the abortion debate. You can be free to have an abortion, but aren't you harming others, or an other, rather importantly, in that situation? And that's why the argument revolves around, when does life begin? Because, is the other, does the other come into existence at conception, or does the other come into existence at the point of birth, or somewhere in between? That's the raging debate. So other aspects of the French Revolution: fundamental rights, liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression was declared a natural, imprescriptible right. That's a word I've never seen before, imprescriptible right. It included freedom of speech, which carried over to the American Revolution as one of our key amendments, freedom of the press, and equality before the law. This is all, should all sound familiar to you. Their motto was liberté, égalité, fraternité. It was not institutionalized. It's actually, you'll see that inscribed on buildings in France. It wasn't institutionalized until after the fact, but at the time, this was their slogan, liberté, égalité, and fraternité. And there's no mistake, and we're going to have this discussion now, that Kamala Harris's campaign co-opted this slogan. She called it liberty, equity, and unity. And we'll see what she meant by those terms, but there's no mistake in my mind that they co-opted this French Revolution rhetoric. And in fact, if you read many of the forums online, you'll see that people advocating for the beheading of billionaires and the upper class in general. So this rhetoric found its audience. It's a dog whistle, to use a word that the Democrats like to use. And that's why that Hollywood actress, Kathy someone or other, had herself photographed holding up Donald Trump's severed head by the hair. Rather gruesome and in very poor taste. But these people on the left, a significant percentage of them, are actively thinking about physically harming the successful, quote unquote, the rich, as Bernie Sanders likes to say, or millionaires and billionaires. not to mention corporations. So let's now go to that current perversion, I think, of these words. So Harris's convention speeches often invoked references to freedom, and if you'll remember, on television, she would frequently tell the story of her as a child in a pram at some protest or other, saying that she wanted freedom. Well, let's see what she means by that word, or what she thinks freedom means. Oh, and by the way, there's no, should not be a surprise to her that her campaign anthem was Beyonce's song Freedom. So, this is central, very much central to her message. Now, this is what she has to say about it. When Republicans use the word freedom, they mean that the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. Now, that is a gross perversion of the meaning of the word freedom. Freedom means freedom from government control. And what she should have used here is, and she also talks about corporations being free to pollute your air and water. Remember that liberty ends where other people's rights begin. So you can't act in a way that infringes on other people's rights. And polluting the air and water is obviously an infringement of other people's rights by corporations, or I suppose by individuals. So freedom does not mean the freedom to pollute. Banks free to take advantage of customers. That's, please, you don't have to open a bank account, and banks compete with one another, and they compete fiercely for your custom. So it's not like they all get in the room and say, oh, let's screw the little guy. They offer a service, and they compete with one another, and they offer a rather cheap service for what they do. So there's no freedom, there's no advantage taken here. That's just an insult to anybody's intelligence. And as we mentioned earlier, this abortion topic here is not cut and dried in the sense that, you should be free to abort your child whenever the hell you feel like it, because you're infringing on the child's liberty. And that's where your liberty ends, when someone else's liberty begins and someone else's right to life. So please, don't distort the meaning of the word freedom. That's underhand. So now, on the other hand, when she says Democrats talk about freedom, they mean freedom to make a better life for yourself. Well, that's fine. I have no issue with that. The key word is for yourself and the people you love, your family. You're free to pursue happiness. I'm 100% okay with that. But again, you can't go around robbing banks to do that, because now you're infringing on the freedom, on the rights of others. Freedom to make your own healthcare decisions. Again, the abortion thing. You can make your own healthcare decisions, and in fact, I'm okay with people taking drugs if they're adults. They should be able to do what the hell they want. If it makes them happy, which it doesn't, but they should be free to do it. And as long as they don't mess with my kids or come and steal my stuff to go pay for their habit, that's where you draw the line. And yeah, your kid's freedom to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in the hall. Now that is just like infuriating. What they're doing here is they're confusing safety with freedom, and these two things are a trade-off. You can be free or you can be safe, 100% free, 100% safe. You can't be both. All right. So safety is not freedom. Safety is the absence of freedom because the government has to take all kinds of measures to restrict people's freedom to make sure that you're safe. So please don't come with that. And she goes back here to the country was born out of a desire for freedom from King George. Now, what I didn't know until I read this was that this rhetoric goes back to Roosevelt in 1941 and his State of the Union address. He came up with this concept of four freedoms: freedom of speech and expression. I don't have any problem with that. You should be able to say what's on your mind. And frankly, in the United States, we're losing that, not so much at the hand of the government, although there have been some attempts, notably by the Democrats, to censor, and actually appointed a censorship czar under Biden for a period of time. It caused such an uproar that they had to get rid of her. But I'm fine with Roosevelt's first freedom of the four freedoms, the freedom of speech and expression. But what we have now, again, from the left, is this oppression through pressure, through social pressure. The woke agenda, where you have to call certain people by their chosen pronouns, and you can't use certain words, because if you do, you're a bigot or you're a racist, and they'll, if they can, get you fired and basically infringe on your pursuit of happiness. And they're okay with that. And they're infringing on your right to use whatever words you please, which, there's no way to construe use of a word as infringing on someone else's or harming someone else's liberty. Sticks and stones can hurt my bones, words can never harm me. So that's another example of the Democrats being speaking with forked tongue, and being hypocrites. So freedom of worship was number two. I have no problem with that. You can worship whichever, you can follow whichever religion works for you. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. And you just cannot impose by force your religious views on others. So this whole Sharia law thing is very invasive of your personal liberty. And I reject that aspect of Islam. Islam, this again is debated, but Islam encourages the faithful to kill the non-believers if they will not convert. Again, I'm sorry, but that's an infringement of my right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. You can't go around killing people because they don't follow the same religion that you do. So, yeah, you can follow whatever religion, but watch your acts, because you got to stay within your lane, and don't force or commit acts which harm others based on your religious beliefs. And unfortunately, religion has a long and sordid history of doing this, going back to the French Inquisitions, for example. These people act out, and the whole Irish conflict, it was also religious, fundamentally religious. So I'll put a big asterisk next to religion. as a fundamental freedom. Okay, number 3, and this is where you get into security and safety, and this is a distortion here. Freedom from want. Okay, this, you cannot put freedom from want in the same sentence as freedom of speech or the right to pursue happiness, because by definition, if you're free, you're taking a risk. You're taking it on yourself to support yourself. You're not asking other people, you're not infringing or you're not usurping other people's property in order to free yourself from want. And this is where the water starts to get very muddy in this democratic philosophy. Freedom from want is actually a desire for safety or security, which is the antithesis of freedom. And they throw it in there because that's their agenda, and they're trying to pull a fast one on you and say you have a right to be free from want. You do not have a right to be free from want. I'm sorry, because that necessarily requires that the government on your behalf takes by force, at the point of a gun if necessary, the fruits of other people's labors, and that is the direct infringement upon their liberty and their pursuit of happiness. So, and the gun part is ultimately infringement on their lives. So don't muddy the water here and come with this slip the safety agenda into the liberty agenda. That's not correct. And freedom from fear, again, security. They want to dress security up as freedom, and security and freedom are two ends of the spectrum. One, you can have some freedom and a lot of security, or you can have a lot of freedom and a little security. You can't have 100% freedom and 100% security at the same time. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. There's no money tree, or there's no free source of food coming out of a well in the ground somewhere, or there's no factory that produces cars for nothing or builds homes for nothing that the government can then distribute to their voters. So this is a distortion. This is a really sneaky distortion, in my opinion. Let's go to another take on Kamala. I talked about her use of the word freedom. She also used the words equity and unity, which are direct parallel to the French égalité and fraternité words. And this is where the socialist agenda starts to creep in, and they are sugarcoating it here and trying to sell it. It's actually an extremely oppressive ideology, which is the antithesis of liberty. You can't have liberty and have equity at the same time, because equity requires that the government, again, at gunpoint, IRS agents do carry guns in some cases, that the IRS at gunpoint will take the fruits of one man's labor and hand them to another man. And by the way, in the process, they mess everything up. And I've talked about the leaky bucket many times. They lose half of it, spill it on the floor, speaking metaphorically. They take the fruits of one man's labor, spill a bunch of it, and give what's left to some other person to bring the successful, quote unquote, the wealthy, the rich down, and elevate the poor, the unsuccessful, until everybody is equal. And that's what they want to see, equity of outcomes. That, I'm afraid, is a huge con. And that, in fact, that is the con in communism and socialism. The idea that you can have freedom and at the same time you can have equality of outcomes. Those two things are like yin and yang, or not like yin and yang. I guess they're like oil and water. You can't mix both of them. They're separate concepts. If you want a society that is equitable and everybody has the same standard of living, regardless of their productivity, their natural ability, and their diligence, if you want that, you've got to have an extremely coercive government that monitors how much you have and how much this person has and how much that person has, and takes this person's stuff and distributes it to this person to, again, not level up the playing field, but to level up the score. That's a different thing. You can have a level playing field where everybody has the same shot at success, and then you have the freedom to succeed or fail. That's one thing. That's equality. Equality before the law. You don't discriminate against one person in favor of another. In the legal system, but it's not equality of outcome is an evil thing, a very evil thing. And then, in terms of unity, this wing of the democratic movement, when she says unity, she means that her political base must unite and fight and win. And what winning means is to impose their agenda on the opposition. There's no unity in that. That's civil war. There's no, and so again, that's a crock right there. It's not unity. In the case of the French Revolution, fraternité meant brotherhood. You can't say brotherhood anymore because half the people get offended when you say that. By the way, did you see that idiot on CNN feigning offense when Hegseth said, "Leave no man behind"? Now all of a sudden it was like, well, Hegseth's this bad guy because you can't say man because it could have been a woman pilot. I mean, please give me a break. All right, so I hope I've shed some light on the use of this word, or the abuse of it, the distortion of it in these political discussions. And I wish you a free day.